Alright, back to club football. We had Cavan Gaels superstar Seanie Johnson on the show yesterday. We got Chrissy McKaigue of Slaughtneil, who may well be marking. Probably can't tell us that just yet, can you? No. And who will you be marking?
I don't know yet. Mickey hasn't told me, so we're training tonight, so perhaps we'll know then.
How does that work? At what point during the week do you get told this is what your role is going to be, or do you kind of have a sense in advance this team has a specific playmaker and for whatever reason that has become my job?
I think Mickey always keeps his cards pretty close to his chest. That's just the kind of guy he is. He's a very quiet man, but I'd say tonight we'll see discussions begin about who will go and whom and whatever else, but I suppose we have that advantage now of Cavan Gaels playing against Derry only twice, so we're able to get down and have a look at them and just keep an eye on their strengths and whatever else. But we live in a modern age now where there's no more secrets anyway.
Yeah.
We all have access to video, and we all know people that know other people, so
yeah,
both teams will be well versed.
We were talking about this actually with Seanie yesterday about Ulster football, the reputation that it has, tough, hard fought, and in fairness the first game that Cavan Gaels were involved in was not the most stellar. I think it was 11 points apiece or something,
yeah.
But their replay was great, and your semi-final was a sensational, free-flowing, free-scoring game against Kilcar.
Yeah, well, and in saying that, Kilcar, very, very good side, and that night Noma was very, very, very unique in the sense that it was a November's night Noma. There wasn't a breeze, there wasn't any rain, and the pitch was just fantastic. So it allowed for a really high quality game too. Probably the game prior to that against Oma was up in Salt Park, and there was a gale force breeze blowing down the pitch, and there was raining and all them things, so it made it for a bit of a war of attrition. But against Kilcar now, it was a really good game, and I think it was really positive for showcasing everything that is good about the club competition.
Yeah, I think because Kilcar obviously got hammered for the Donegal final, which was like a 0-0 draw or whatever the score was in the end, but they were like, oh, this is terrible, it's Donegal football, and then they actually end up producing an amazing game like that. So I have a lot of, like, watching some of the hurling, for example, you're looking at the pitches and they're so boggy, and you just think, imagine if that was in Thurles in high summer, where both teams actually have the chance to play hurling when it was supposed to be played. And I guess you must feel exactly the same. Like, the weather's good today, it could be absolutely howling gale at the weekend, and it completely dictates what people think about the standard of football they're seeing. Exactly,
very, very fair point. And I suppose we're very fortunate in Ulster, actually. Like, by and large, all the pitches are really, really good. We can't control the weather, obviously, but you're right, a lot of the time, and that's the beauty of the club competition, isn't it? Some days the weather is decent, and other days it's just really, really difficult to even stand your 2 feet, never mind execute the skills of the game. So that's the beauty of the competition, and I think that's why we've all kind of grown to love it, because a lot of the time, like, you look at the Vincent's game last, and down in Aughrim, massive crowd, and it just was everything that was good about the GAA, the underdog winning, and we don't get to experience that in another county game, and I think that's why the club championship is so unique.
You mentioned that Vincent's game there. We had Leighton Glynn on the show the day afterwards, and I asked him about what was their plan against Diarmuid Connolly, and he said there wasn't really a plan, we just kind of went with the flow. Whereas earlier on this year, you clearly had a plan to stop Diarmuid Connolly, and it worked out. Like, how long in advance were you working on that? Was it something that was in the pipework for a few weeks beforehand?
Tell us the truth.
I will tell you the truth, and the truth is that of course we had a plan for Diarmuid Connolly. Of course we had a plan for Mossy Quinn. Of course we had a plan for Shane Carty. All these players are quality players, but the one thing I will say is that Mickey Moore, it's in his DNA. His thing as a manager is that he is absolutely meticulous. He's meticulous in his preparation, and he's particularly meticulous in his analysis, in the way that he actually analyses the opposition. And he really would sicken you at times. He's ringing you, and he's talking to you about it all the time. You just after winning a championship game, and he's already sitting at the dinner table with you. What do you think of him? Who do you think should go on him for the next day? He's just completely fascinated by Gaelic football. He's completely fascinated by that side of the game, and I I know for a fact Mickey's head for the last 2 weeks has been just Cavan Gaels or Derry Gonley, Cavan Gaels, Derry Gonley. Probably the saving grace for him now is that he's had in his head as Cavan Gaels now, and he will just have zoned in Cavan Gaels. He was the 2 games down in Clonus. He'll be watching the videos and whatever else, and you know, the great thing with Mickey Moran is he respects every player, and he maybe sees things in players that are lesser known that maybe other managers wouldn't see.
On both sides, on your side as well, obviously.
Well, yeah, well, he knows us inside out, but every team we go to play against, we always tend to look at the Dermot Conleys, we tend to look at the Shawnee Johnsons, we tend to look at the Conor Milers from we played against. But Mickey Moore never misses the other guys that add to that team that maybe other people would overlook or whatever else, or underestimate. And that's what makes him such a good manager. No, it'll not just be about curtailing Shawnee Johnson or Dunn this weekend. It'll be whoever Cavan Gaels have and whoever they have or whoever they have coming off the bench, and that's why he's such a good manager.
Like, I hate to stick to last season because I'm coming to the Dr. Crokes match, but it seemed that in terms of stopping the opposition that day, I think Crokes scored 1-9. Was it?
Yeah, like, something like that.
That's certainly like job done on that end, wasn't it? That obviously there's no sort of consolation from losing an All-Ireland final, but certainly Moran's plan in a defensive perspective worked that day.
Yeah, I did, and well, I suppose the bedrock of our success over the last number of years has been our defensive record. I suppose the last game against Kilcara, conceding 17 points doesn't look that great on paper, but when you actually go and analyse that game, some of the points and scores Kilcara took, there wasn't much you could do from a defensive point of view.
Yeah.
That some of the scores were just unbelievable. You know, you had Paddy McBurty, who at the minute, along with Conor McManus, in my opinion, is the best forward in the country. On current form, he's up there, and he was in hot form that night. But a couple of our players kicked points that night were unbelievable. But likewise, we probably scored scores that night that we haven't been used to kicking either. But against Crokes last year, yes, we limited them. Whatever else could have happened, should have happened, whatever happened, the reality is, if you dwell too much on what happened, it would have crippled most teams. We've shown that our biggest strength in our club is our unity, and we probably have many flaws, but one is our strength of unity and a strength of character. And you know, it's been a pretty good effort to come back and win a Derry Championship for the 4th year in a row and get back to an Ulster final for the 3rd time in 4 years.
So I was going to say that, does it kind of feel like that those people who might have said, oh, last year was a fluke, that 3 teams from 3 different codes managed to make it to the All-Ireland series, whereas this year 2 of the 3 are already done, and even like getting to the Ulster final in football kind of suggests that it's not a fluke either. Is there some pleasure in that?
Not really, because you know what? Irish society there's just so much negativity attached to it, isn't there? With every good statement there comes a negative one, and I've been around this game long enough to know now that you've got to be thick-skinned. And you just kind of gather a council of people around you that you really respect, and that you actually go to them for help or whatever else. If you listen to every person's opinion on you or your team or your club or what happened or what hadn't or what didn't happen, you'd be mentally crippled. So last year was very, very unique, and this year has been really, really good so far. But it's like anything else in sport, the more you won, the more you want. You just want to keep bottling that feeling of that success, of taking these huge trophies back to your community and club, and the hunger on Sunday will be every bit as strong as when we started out in 14.
Where does that unity come from? Like, and when do you remember first recognising that you as a group had it?
I've always recognised that as a club we've had it, and I think it maybe stems from us being a rural club. Not that town clubs or city clubs don't have it, but I think it's maybe arguably more prevalent in the actual rural clubs. And Slaughtneil have always had that real tight unity, like, you know, going back to 1981 when the hunger strike was going on in the north, and Slaughtneil pulled all his teams out as a sign of solidarity, and there just was that real care factor that we're more than just Gaelic games. And you would see that with all the different projects and schemes that go on in the local area, about the promotion of our Irish language, of our Irish culture and heritage. And we have our own Irish primary school. About 6 or 7 miles away now, there's a local Irish secondary school. And there's so much of that type of thing going on around the area, and that gels people together. It keeps people at home, it gives people jobs, and it creates that sense of identity. And I don't care what anybody says in sport or in life or whatever else, if you don't create a culture, a positive culture, you're never going to get success.
But so take us back, right? So the hunger strike happens and the teams get pulled out. It's obviously after that culture that everybody kind of begins to have conversations like, what do we stand for? Like, those conversations have to happen, maybe not openly in public forums, but maybe it takes a while for them to become public. The peace process happens, and then the club kind of becomes a national club over the last 5 or 6 years. But that work must have been going on since the 80s.
Oh, and you know, back further, like, and we're established in 1953, and 1966 is when we won our first ever county hurling title. We won 4 titles in 5 years then. We were always a senior club, not really threatening much, to be honest. We were beating a county football final in '69 by the great Balahi team, and then after we pulled out as a mark of respect for the hunger strikers, we got relegated. The county board relegated us to intermediate. We won the intermediate, Ger Intermediate, and after that we didn't win a football honour at senior level until 2004.
Right.
We won our first ever county title in 2004. So it's been a dramatic rise then.
And when that happened, when did the whole notion of the club being, you know, that kind of Mesquite Club Barcelona thing, where you are part of, you're like supposed to be, Barcelona's probably a bad example because they've sold out, but you guys obviously haven't. But you know what I mean, where that kind of, we are an expression of the local community. Like, was it just football and hurling at that stage, or when did the language start to take off? When did the sense that we need to get our kids educated in the culture? Like, I can't believe you know all that history about your club in a way that most people are kind of like, yeah, we're a senior club, won a few titles, one in the 80s, I think, sometime. Like, you've got chapter and verse on it.
Yeah, I'd be similar to a lot of the boys in our club, in that I'd have a huge interest and respect of those that have went before me. And the reason why I have a huge respect for them is because they were the ones that battled through all them years. They have given us the facilities we have now, which are second to none, and they got right out of it. And a true sign of character is what you do in times of adversity, in my opinion. And them boys now that are, you know, well through their years, like, you would see how much it means to them now. And if I can't feel inspired and motivated by that, well, then I'm at the wrong club. But the Irish culture and language probably started to take off around probably the millennium. And Thomas Cassidy, who's obviously passed away last year, he was a huge driver in that, and there's many other people in the area that shared his vision, that he wanted Slaughtneil to become a Gaeltacht area, and we're very close to becoming that now. And I suppose naturally what's attached to Irish language and culture is Gaelic games, so it was always natural for us to, you know, continue that development of it.
It's obviously vaguely controversial in the north, like, all the time, the whole kind of language issue.
Yeah, big time at the minute.
Yeah, and so do you feel part of that, actually, that the success of the club helps to further that and kind of reduce the constant chirping away in the background?
Aye, and, you know, sadly in the north there still is that there still is that attachment, or that kind of attachment to that political divide, and I suppose that the good that Gaelic Games can do is that, yes, you're right, it can showcase all that's good about Irish culture and everything else, and we have some unbelievable ambassadors in our club at the minute to play, particularly within our camogie ranks, that are, you know, fluent Irish speakers, and they just embody everything that is good about Slaughtneil community. But Slaughtneil is going to, you know, it is eventually going to have the vast majority of its members being fluent Irish, and that was Thomas Cassidy's, that was one of his big visions, so it's going to come to fruition, and we're doing a lot of things right outside GA, and as a community we're thriving as a result of it. People aren't emigrating, they're all staying, where our best and most talented people are staying, and that's having a positive effect on the community.
because that's the bit that I think is hard for people to understand. A lot of people have these kind of, they seem like crackpot ideas where like, oh, we'll become a Gael talk, and everybody goes, yeah, good man, see you later. But you've actually, as a group and families and interlinked organisations, have decided, you know what, this actually isn't a bad idea, we could do it. And to get that though, people have to kind of fully believe it. Like, it needs to come from within. You can't pay lip service to learn the language. Like, you can do it, but no one ever gets there.
And it's not only just probably paying lip service to the language. It's more the fact that there's so much hard work involved in setting up schools, and schools are such a competitive business nowadays. It's just a fight for numbers constantly. But people are seeing the beauty of what having an actual Irish identity is about in the local area, and we're getting kids from other local clubs. Now, they're not coming to play for us, but they're coming to the actual school. Yeah. And by the way, it's not some kind of ploy for us to get more players in. But they are coming because the word is starting to spread around, and I wish I could speak fluent Irish. I wish I could, but I can't. And because I'm probably that generation that's just a wee bit too old. There's guys in our club now that are probably 4 or 5 years younger than me, and they're conversing in Irish at training, and you just see, I just wish I could do that. But it just as a real kind of special feeling, and it's great to see the schools doing so well, and because it adds so much.
Is this symptomatic of Derry and the area around Derry as a whole, or is this very kind of insular when it comes to Slaughtneil, or do you think this could kind of branch out to different areas of East Derry?
It's happening. It's happening in Derry quite a bit, and I suppose the Irish medium school now at secondary level starting is a really big thing, because it gives the kids the chance to, well, hang on a minute, I done Irish all the way through primary school, I can go and actually educate myself in Irish at actually secondary level, and but you would see more and more Irish primary schools popping up all around Derry. I know where I work in Lamavady, there's an Irish primary school there, and it's absolutely booming. It's only started about 10 years ago, and the numbers have just went up. So it probably is the in vogue thing at the minute too. Yeah. You know, people are starting to become more aware of their history and their past, and they want to have that identity, because it is a very special thing being Irish. And I think, yes, there is that attachment to GA along with it, but and probably the success of our club has maybe inspired a few people around Derry too, but by and large, I think that the Irish language has grown, and I suppose when you hear it being mentioned up at Stormont, or the lack of action at Stormont recently, you know, it's starting to gather a bit of ground.
How do you guard against the bad parts of nationalism coming in? You know, like I don't mean nationalism in the north. I mean, like, you look at Trump and you look at what's happening right across Europe, and you look at the Brexit vote. Like, identity politics is actually becoming a bad word, and you're saying actually what we want to do is make sure that we fully embrace our identity and spread that. Like, there's definitely a balancing act between our identity is great, but equally, you know, there's loads of other identities out there too, and they're fine. Yeah,
and that's where you got to be careful, isn't it? You don't want to be attaching stereotypes to anything. Nobody wants for the North to go back to the troubled times it was in, and you know, I think there's so much. I think, in particular, the GAA has been very, very good about opening everybody into the association too. I know in Lamavady and the local Lamavady club, they have young fellas playing that are exceptional footballers from rugby backgrounds that are Protestants, and that's been welcomed. And I've been talking to a few of them, and they're just loving the game, whatever else, and it's great to see that. And
that kind of has to be the hope, isn't it? That this all becomes normal.
Of course it does,
that it's just a sport, and
because we want everyone playing our games, because some people don't get the chance to play our games because they feel that they haven't the right to, or they feel that I wouldn't be accepted there. That's completely wrong. And as a Gael myself, that's never the message to send out. I want to see GA become the biggest, or the best it possibly can be, and then we go into that whole talk about professionalism. That's not what I'm talking about. I just want to see as many Irish people playing the game as possible, and of course international people too, but step by step. But you're completely right. You don't want any kind of negative stereotypes creeping in, and but I don't think that's prevalent at the minute. I think most people feel welcomed by the GAA, and I don't think anybody should feel intimidated by the rise of the Irish language again.
Yeah, it feels to me a lot like you're defining the best parts of your character, or not you personally, but like the movement is defining the best parts of the character, as opposed to defining themselves by, well, we're not British and so therefore this is what we do. That it's not a negative thing, that this is actually coming from a wellspring inside, as opposed to taking this thing and kind of guarding against it.
Yeah.
It's not a reactionary defensive move.
No, certainly not. And I think as a community in Slaughtneil, we have seen so much good that creating that kind of cohesiveness can actually provide. And the Irish language is just one aspect of that. Gaelic games is another aspect of that. Like, for example, in Slaughtneil, we stripped a bit of like wasteland and the nature and the local nature, and we made it into like a fun type activity park for people to walk around. So it caters for all members of the society. That's another aspect. There's different classes and different functions that take place in a centre that was built in Slaughtneil. It's probably the biggest centre that we have in the place, and it just involves people. It just kind of creates a hub where people can go, where people that maybe in the rural areas, sometimes the elderly people can feel a wee bit alienated.
Yeah.
And Slaughtneil people have been very proactive in thinking about ways and means that we can actually include everybody, help everybody, and just create that kind of feel-good factor in the area. And you would see that with our passionate supporters at games. Now, sometimes they overstep the mark, but by and large they're quite well behaved. But one thing that can't be questioned is their love of Slaughtneil. Yeah.
I guess ultimately as well, it takes a little bit of time for kind of the bad aspects of the past to completely pass away as well, because I was listening to that radio documentary about Slaughtneil there that was made a couple of months ago, and they mentioned that volunteer from a different club who was shot dead when he was locking the gates of the club one night.
Sean Brown, yeah.
Yeah, Sean, that's the name. And like his memory seems to be a big part of volunteers in that area of the country.
So South Derry is traditionally a very nationalist area. Obviously, when you look into the past, and Sean Brown from Bly, their pitch is actually named after him now, and things like that. So there always is that kind of association with it. But sometimes if you dwell too much on what happens in the past and things like that, there becomes it can build up a lot of hostility and a lot of pain and anger and whatever else. I know my parents growing up through the troubles, it's not something that they would necessarily want to talk about, and sometimes it's better to leave the past in the past, but always to be conscious of it and always to be respectful of it. And coming from an area and a family like I do, I've certainly been well versed on what's happened and whatever else, but with that for me comes just a tremendous pride and representing my family and my club, and I think there's a tremendous amount of strength and inspiration can be drawn from that when you go down to the field of play.
Do you know that this is the time of your life, that these couple of years that you're having at the moment, like, are you conscious of that? Because it can't last forever. This is weird. The success that the group have had across 3 sports at the same time, like, it's almost never going to happen again. And no matter how big the Gaeltacht and the movement becomes, you guys are going to be the ones who establish this as this is the culture and this is who the teams are, even just taking all the rest of the stuff away from it. Like, can you enjoy the fact that this is a monumental experience?
It's a very good point, because we were just talking there the other day about what's more challenging about this campaign or whatever else. Is it the physical or mental? And to me it is the mental side of it, because it's non-stop and it's heavy expectations on your shoulders, and there's big games and big crowds and big pressure ultimately. And the only way that I can kind of find some kind of solace at times is to step back and just say, you know what, how lucky am I to be living at this stage, playing with the players I'm playing, and to won what I've won. Now, obviously, getting beat by Cardiff when I'm 15 and Dr. Crokes is going to be forever a sore point. But, that's sport. Like, you just have to accept the good with the bad at times. But tremendously gracious for what I've been allowed to experience with this group, with this club. And, but it's, it's so, like, the more you won, you just want to keep winning.
Yeah.
You just want to keep winning. And I know that sounds greedy and horrible and all the rest of it, but that's the truth.
I have one last question. How do you go back to county football after the club football means so much? That, like, you're part of a movement here, really, and you genuinely represent your community in a way that's it's become a bit of a cliche. The club, it's the lads you grew up with, but like, you guys are doing something very different. And then the county's just such a different thing now. County football is just such a different thing.
Yeah, it has. It became very commercial, hasn't it, almost? But I suppose I still believe the best county teams and the best managers at county level create that same unity and spirit in their county squad. It mightn't be the same, obviously, because the whole, like, dynamic's very different, but still, like, you would see that Dublin team this year in the Ireland final, they were together.
They were.
You would see Mayo over the last number of years keep bouncing back. They're together. You would know when you play Tyrone with their level of belief and expectation, they're together. So it is possible, but it's just a different dynamic at club level compared to county level. But the county game for me is still something that every club player, if they're good enough, should aspire to play, because it just tests you out. The club one's a wee bit different, but as long as you're fit and able, any advice I give to anybody is to try and play as long as you can at both.